this from their own translation of the Holy Scriptures, responding to the heresy of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Some people say if we don't have history, we don't have future. What are the sources of the tradition? What happened in the Council of Chalcedon? What are the differences between Eastern Orthodoxy and Oriental Orthodoxy? How was the New Testament collected? What are the major beliefs of the Catholic Church? What actually we know about the history of the Church? Was Martin Luther actually a reformer? What are the cults? Who are the Mormons? Who are the Seventh-day Adventists? What are the major pillars of the Coptic Orthodox Church? If you want to know the answers of all these questions and many other topics, watch our series, History of the Church. Stay tuned on CYC.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hosanna, where we study together God's Word. This amazing vision that Daniel had. How long will you, O God, allow this to happen? We also learn that nothing happens without God's permission. The second 6 chapters are prophetic in nature. It prospered in everything it did.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Ask on CYC. So as society changes, so has our youth. Now our youth are starting to branch off and not study your stereotypical subjects that we've grown up as Egyptians and the cultural with our typical subjects that have been ingrained with us since our mother country. So now our youth are branching off and trying new things. Some have creative minds that are getting into the creative world and the creative industry and in industries like fashion and photography. However, it's become apparent to us that these industries are not safe for our children. So today we're about to debunk and find out why do we have these stereotypes of these industries and why we don't want our kids to study or get into the fashion or creative industries. It's work just like any other job. But today we're here to find out what are the myths and how we're going to debunk these myths on tonight's show. And it's okay. We are Christians. We're going to be Christians wherever we go. And that's what we need to hold on to. And while we work in different industries out there. So tonight's episode is about debunking the myths of the fashion and creative and artistic industry, and we're going to focus on fashion photography tonight. So if you have any questions, please, the phone number is 0416 551 292. This is a live show giving you the opportunity to tune in, ask questions, share your thoughts and share your opinions. I'll introduce you to tonight's guest. We have with us Chantel Kim Kenyon. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us more about your background.
Gosh, I don't really know where to start with that, but I have a degree in art history and ancient history. I also have a degree in education, secondary education, and I also have another degree in visual communication, majoring in photography. On top of that, I have a background in illustration, specifically portraiture, and I was also a makeup artist at some stage.
Okay, so you have all these degrees behind you, but
Yeah.
it seems like you have a lot of focus on the fashion photography.
That's right.
Yeah, so what got you into this?
I sort of fell into fashion photography. Like I said, I was a makeup artist for a number of years, and I would be doing makeup on a lot of fashion runway shows. And I would bring my camera to these shows and I'd photograph the models on stage or on the show so that I could take those images back, put them in my portfolio and showcase to the world, I guess, that, you know, I did makeup on these models and for these shows. And yeah, through that, a lot of people started to see my photographs and fell in love with them, and things just sort of snowballed out of proportion from that. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously being a photographer and, you know, every photographer has his first or their first love. And
Yeah.
when I mean love, I'm talking about their first camera.
Yeah.
So what was your first love or what was your first camera? So what got you into this?
I bought my first DSLR, which was a really amateur SLR. It was a 1000D, Canon 1000D. And I bought it because I wanted to take higher resolution photographs of my drawings at the time. I didn't really have an interest in photography, but I remember buying this SLR because I'm not really sure why I didn't think of a scanner, but I bought this SLR so that I could photograph my drawings and became obsessed with photography through that. I'd go outside and take my camera everywhere, to locations, to the beach, to my friends' birthdays. I would go out and like photograph just random people at these events, and I'd post them on social media, and my work sort of just got recognized more and more because I was just constantly photographing things. I was just completely obsessed with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how long have you been a photographer and what industries did you work for?
Cool. So I've been a photographer, I think, almost 7 years now. Like I said, I started off shooting absolutely everything because I was so obsessed with this new medium. I had a background in art, and photography was this new exciting medium for me. And so I would go out and photograph events. I'd shoot landscapes. I'd shoot macro photography, so like those extreme close-up photographs of like insects and leaves and stuff. What else? I'd photograph everything, anything and everything I could. So that allowed me to sort of sort of gave me experience in a wide range of industries, in like the events industries, in corporate events, in the fashion world, in beauty, pretty much everything. I sort of dabbled in everything until I really knew where I wanted to focus, and from there I sort of went into the fashion and beauty industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question because I'm pretty sure a lot of audience members out there are curious.
Yeah.
So when you came to your parents and sat down and told them, hey, I'm not studying medicine,
How did that go?
how did it go?
Well, my parents aren't really Egyptian. So my mum is half Egyptian, half Armenian. My dad's full Armenian. So they're not very Egyptian-minded.
But
if I can
regardless,
say that.
every parent
Yeah.
wants their kids to be doctors or lawyers or architects.
Yeah.
So this is your non-typical
Yeah.
what parents want career
That's right.
option, you know?
Yeah.
So were they supportive when they first found out, or how did they take it?
I think they were worried at first, and they were discussing this the other day, and they're like, "No, we weren't. We were supporting you from day one." I'm like, I remember you guys had a few like concerns, but you know, I was really young. I think I started at like 18, and so they were kind of worried about what the wedding, even the wedding industry, like, oh, you're going to be at all these receptions and you know what that gets like. And there was concerns there. And then when I wanted to do fashion photography, it was like, oh, the fashion industry, how's that going to be like? Like, they were really concerned. But they were always sort of very supportive of me just being happy, really. They never really forced me to do anything I wasn't interested in, even at school. I think I was the first first person in the Coptic school to drop maths. I remember having the principal ask me, like, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, I have no interest in maths, I'm dropping it. So yeah, like, luckily I had really supportive parents. They just were always very supportive of me just being happy. So whatever I was interested in, they would sort of push me along that path. And as long as I was happy and I was willing to work hard in that industry, whatever it was, the money and that type of thing would sort of follow through. I know a lot of people are concerned about, oh, is there even money in photography? Or like, how do you make a living? How do you survive? But yeah, my dad has always sort of supported the notion of, if you work hard in no matter what you do, you will reap the rewards of that. So I'm very blessed to have some very supportive parents.
Very nice.
They think outside the box.
Okay, so obviously Australia's a growing industry in terms of fashion and photography. So you would think there's a lot of job opportunities. Is this the case, or how did you break into the media industry?
Australia is very segregated from the rest of the world, so it's not as busy as, say, London or New York or those fashion sort of centres. But I'm a firm believer if you produce the type of work that those clients want to see, you can break into the industry. And clients that aren't even aware that they need those types of images will then approach you and say, actually, that's exactly what I think will work for this next campaign or next ad. And they'll hire you based on your portfolio. So I've forgotten the question.
So I was just talking about how it was a competitive to get into, or are the work opportunities really out there?
Yeah. So I guess there is. You need to work hard in the industry, like in any other industry, I guess. You need to put the hours in, and if you're able to produce a strong portfolio, then you can sort of reap the rewards of that and attract potential clients. So I haven't really had an issue with that. Yeah. Yeah,
okay. All right, so now let's talk about the whole aspect of the magazine industry, or the type of photography that you take, being unchristian material. So what is your opinion on this?
God, unchristian material.
Well, let's say you photograph models,
yeah,
and some of them could be half clothed, for example.
Yeah, so I guess it sort of depends on no, not really depends, but it's up to you as a person and as a photographer what type of work you take on. So if you look at my work, mine is very passive and quite beautiful. It's not sexual or explicit in any sort of way. And that's just the type of style I've adopted. That was a choice I've made. Whereas, other people can go off in another direction, and that's up to them. I think any industry can be unchristian, and it's up to you as a person to decide how you want to approach that industry and the type of person you want to be. So clients are very aware that I don't photograph anything explicit. They're very aware of what type of work and what type of style I have, and they hire me based on that. So I've never had any opportunities to photograph anything outside of that. Clients come up to me because they're aware of what I produce and they want exactly that. So I haven't really run into those issues at all.
Okay, so how about the actual environment itself? Because it's a fast-paced environment, very competitive. So you can expect a lot of roughness, unchristian roughness from people in the industry. How do you deal with that and maintain your Christian values? Yeah,
again, this is another myth, but you, as a photographer, I'm in complete control over the teams I work with. So I've spent a lot of time over the last few years really trying to hone in on skilled creatives that are in line with who I am as a person and sort of stand with my beliefs, if that makes sense. So I don't really want to be working with a team that isn't that I can't be myself in or can't be comfortable with, because that sort of affects how I shoot, how I deal with the model, and how the whole shoot sort of runs. So I've yeah, I sort of bring teams on based on who they are and what their beliefs are. And if I feel uncomfortable, or if, that particular person isn't someone who I necessarily hang out with, then they're not on my team. I don't bring them to shoots. So shoots for me, when I'm photographing these models for magazines, or photographing editorials or campaigns, or whatever it is, the team is built of people that that are all in line with who I am, what I produce, and it's quite comfortable. So it's actually really relaxed, it's chilled, and we have a great time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so now let's talk about the myths. What are these myths?
Gosh. There are a few, like you've just sort of spoken about a couple of them, the whole environment being unchristian. Another thing is like models and those sort of unrealistic expectations. Do they actually look like that? The reality is the models that we use are quite young. You'd be surprised that some of the models I've photographed, they sort of look like they're, my age, 28 or whatever. But sometimes they range from about 18 to the cutoff is usually 23, and then the model sort of goes into retirement almost. So there are those expectations, body sort of image expectations, I guess. How much of an image is photoshopped? Are they actually that thin? And the answer is yes, because they're quite young. They haven't sort of been, grown into their own skin. So they are quite thin built. It's not because of a diet or anything. It's just because they're young. And they've got flawless looking skin because they haven't hit that age yet. That's one of the biggest things people don't understand. They're looking at these kids essentially and like, why don't I look like that? I'm like, well, because she's 16, not 16, but like 18. And I guess that's causing a massive sort of problem for a lot of people, because they're looking at these images and they're just like, why don't I look like that?
Okay. Do you deal with people who maybe borderline suffer from anorexia or eating disorders, or even people who just use recreational drugs maybe to stay in shape? Or?
Yeah. Recreational drugs. Not to stay in shape, I'm not really sure about that, but for fun?
No, to stay,
in
the game or in the industry, or to maintain their status, being an environment where it's recreational.
Yeah. Not people I've worked with. Again, like most of the models I've worked with are quite young, and I've even had the parents of these models come to the shoots, because again, like say if they were under 18, there's that you need to have a guardian with you. So it's all very quite innocent actually. I'm not really sure where, maybe it's, I don't know, the whole glitz and glam of the fashion industry that sort of created this notion that it's really bad, but it's actually not. Like the fact that we have the model's parents with us on set sort of goes to show how safe it is. And because these models are quite young, like they're still at school. So yeah, they don't really, the ones I've met haven't really gone through that type of thing yet. And sorry, what was the other thing before the drugs?
Oh, just the borderline anorexia or some eating disorders.
Yeah, I've met older models that had that, because obviously they've sort of grown up in an industry that's, says pretty much don't grow up, stay that size, stay that thin. And that sort of affected them mentally later on in life. And because I've sort of, those particular models have sort of grown up with them, it's nice to sort of then approach them and be like, hey, like I've noticed that you're, not looking yourself, or what's going on. You start to pick up on the signs that something's not up, and then that's when I can sort of step in and be a support for them and sort of help them through that. And I think that's really important, I guess.
Can you refuse to photograph someone if you think they're not in the right state?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
A lot of the time when we're shooting for big campaigns or ads or magazines, the producer or creative director will go up to the agency and do what we call a casting. So they'll check that the model's in proper health, proper shape, before we actually bring them up on set. But if for some odd reason that casting didn't actually happen, they were just looking at photos and that model came on set and was not looking great, then we would then complain to the agency and they would have to do something about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of videos that we're ready to broadcast.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Let's have a look.
Very nice.
Thank you.
And you mentioned while the videos were playing that this was out of your garage.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Studios cost a lot of money, so I sort of built a studio space in my underground garage, and it has
Okay.
the most beautiful natural light. So I've been photographing a lot of the beauty editorials I've been producing lately in my garage. No one believes me.
Oh, wow. I would have never have expected it unless you told me.
Yeah, it's really
So
cool.
tell us some of the stories about a typical day as a fashion photographer. Demands, hours, clients, everything.
Gosh. It's a lot of paperwork. There is a lot of paperwork. And most of my time is spent not photographing people. So, gosh, a typical day would start with like emailing a bunch of clients, magazines, and then a lot of retouching. Hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of retouching. That's probably actually majority of what I do as a photographer. Especially the beauty images I produce, they require a lot of retouching, and that's not because of unrealistic expectations or anything like that. The reality is, in the type of light I photograph in and the lenses I'm using, it's all high def and stuff. So if I was to show you that image, a raw image, you'd pinpoint every single imperfection that model has because it's so close. And so my job as a photographer or retoucher is to then try to make it look as normal as possible. Like me and you having this conversation now, or people you meet in any everyday life, you're not sort of picking every imperfection they have on their face or in their body or anything. So, but in a still image, because it's so high def and so like the quality is outrageous, that's immediately what your mind does. And so, yeah, that's why we spend so much time retouching, just so that it looks normal and those imperfections aren't the things you focus on. It's instead you're focusing on either the garments or the makeup. They're the first things that sort of should draw your attention, not, oh, she's got a blemish or she has wrinkles or things like that.
Okay. We actually got a question that came in from an audience member.
Yeah.
They're asking, what is your favourite part of your job?
Favorite part of my job? Seeing the final, or the finished product, I guess. I love, the whole process of coming up with a story or an idea or a concept, and then going out and shooting it, and then retouching it, spending hours on it, retouching, and then seeing that final image and seeing the whole story completed. That's probably my favorite part. And then the next favorite part would be seeing it actually in a magazine, in print. It's always really surreal. It's like, I did this. This is mine. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Tell me if this can relate to your industry.
Yeah.
I went hiking one time, and as I was walking up, apparently I heard really good reviews about the lookout.
Yeah.
As I was walking up, there was a photographer. He had a couple of cameras on him. He was walking back down.
Back down, yeah.
And when I went up, obviously, by the time we got up there, the sun was in our face.
Yep.
And I just realised, he came when the sun was facing the other way.
The other way,
So
backlighting.
a lot of research goes into
Yeah.
time of day, location, and so does this relate into your line of work?
Yeah, 100%. Especially when we're shooting out on location for campaigns, we have to do a lot of research on like time of play, like where the sun is at particular times, so that we know where exactly we're going to shoot what look in what area of that location. And then you have to sort of think about lighting. Do you want harsh light, or do you want it backlit so it's a lot softer and like beautiful or whimsical? There are so many things you need to think about when you're out on location, which is why I sort of prefer studio, I guess, because it's in a controlled environment. You don't have to worry about the weather. You don't have to worry about lighting or like finding different location spots to shoot in. It's just you go in, set the lights, you shoot. It's great.
Is this a myth? Photographers love for weddings, outdoor weddings. They love when it's overcast.
Yes.
Why? Why is that?
Because it produces this really beautiful soft light, and it just makes everyone look incredible. Whereas harsh light sort of draws out all your imperfections.
Okay.
Because of the harsh shadows. Whereas soft light, because it's just so even, it just makes your skin look flawless, which makes my life a lot easier when I come to sort of retouch the images.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Good
love
way
it.
that people plan their weddings around weather season.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's pretty much why I shoot in the garage, because you get that sort of really nice diffused light, and it just makes the model's skin look incredible. And I don't have to spend that many hours retouching.
Okay. I know we've touched up on this before, but I'd like to touch up more about it. How do you maintain your Christian stance in a rough environment? I like to use the word rough because, let's face it, it's a very strong industry.
It is.
Unless you are strong charactered, strong in your faith, they'll step all over us.
That's true. It's very true. I think the fashion and media industry have a lot of dominant personalities, and I think the thing they respect the most is you being confident in who you are as a person and being a genuine person. So I don't try to be someone I'm not. I know who I am. I know what I believe in, and I don't steer away from that. No matter who I'm with, no matter what type of, how famous the model is or how famous the makeup artist is, I know who I am and what I believe in. And I think that's one of the most important things, because you're then able to sort of step into this industry, and we're sort of called to be a light in the world. And if you're genuine and you're not ashamed of who you are and what you believe in, then you can be there for these people that usually have no idea about Christianity or have a very negative viewpoint of us as Christians, because sometimes we're not as welcoming, or we don't accept absolutely everyone, and all the stuff that they sort of ramble on about. I've had people, and I don't sort of blatantly advertise that I'm a Christian to every single person I meet, but when that conversation comes around and they ask me and I say, yes, I'm a Christian, they're always shocked, and they're just like, oh, what? And they're shocked because, and then that shock comes with, but you're normal, like, and it's really disheartening to hear that they think we're abnormal or that we're so different to them. And I just love absolutely everyone, and that's what I try to do. I try to help as many other fellow photographers, makeup artists in their own ventures or whatever they're doing, and that's sort of your way, a way that you can sort of spread Christianity, I guess, just being that light and just love as much as you can. I don't know if I've answered that question.
Definitely, yeah. So if someone out there wants to follow in your footsteps, what advice would you give for them?
Gosh, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And if you want to break into the fashion industry, you sort of have to be an expert in that field. Like, you can't just say, oh yeah, I want to be a fashion photographer and know nothing about fashion, or know nothing about the designers or the stylists, or those different key movements in history. You need to be very aware of them. You need to have studied them, which I was very fortunate enough to have done. And be an expert in that field. On top of that, it's a lot of practice. It's important to find your particular style and just produce as much content as possible. I was lucky enough to find my style quite early. that sort of soft, beautiful sort of imagery. And I've just sort of ran with it. And it's only now that I've had these, international clients that email me. I just had another one today, asked me to fly over to London again and shoot another editorial. And it's because I have a very particular style that they're after. So I guess, be an expert in the field, have that knowledge of the fashion industry, how it works, practice absolutely every day. And it sort of has to be something you're constantly thinking about. Like, my mind doesn't stop. I think maybe 90% of what goes on in my mind is about photography or about fashion. It's constant. It's non-stop.
Okay. So where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years' time?
Hopefully shooting for Harper's Bazaar or Vogue.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I sort of just started to dabble in the mainstream magazines, which is really exciting. So I'm hoping it just sort of keeps going, and I will one day photograph for cover or editorial for Vogue or Harper's.
Yeah.
That's the dream. And as well as shooting some more big campaigns in Australia and overseas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got one last question for you.
Yes.
Personal question. You don't have to answer if you don't want
Totally
to.
fine.
But when you see those ads, the iPhone ads,
Yeah.
where there's an amazing photo taken and it says shot by an iPhone.
Yeah.
Is that real?
I don't actually know.
That's not fair, because when I try to take it, it doesn't work.
I'd hope that it was actually shot on an iPhone, but it was probably taken by a photographer and they've just
Who's done lots of research,
Yeah.
scouted the place 100
exactly.
times.
Or it was a professional photographer and they've just made sure that the lighting was absolutely perfect and shot it on the phone. Because
Okay.
I've seen some fashion photographers shoot some behind the scenes editorials or whatever on an iPhone. And the results are pretty good. So, and technology is growing, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on the show, and
You're
pleasure
welcome.
sharing your insight and thoughts about these myths that some people have in our community.
Thank you so much for having me.
A pleasure having you. Thank you for being on the show.
Welcome.
And thank you to our audience members who've tuned in tonight's show. Please, this is a live show. We give you the opportunity to ask questions, to tune in. We're here every Thursday, 8 p.m. Sydney time. This is for you. We make this live show for you every Thursday because we're giving you the opportunity, the audience members, to have the power to tune in, ask questions, and get involved. I'm Mina Ibrahim from your CYC studios in Sydney. Good night and God bless.